Actually, guys, before we jump into the remake of Lesson 4, there's one other thing I want to talk about that I should have talked about the first time I talked about if statements, which is else if. So, let's grab some stuff here. Let's rip out the bool and put it in here just for something to use to help me explain here, and then we'll rip out this statement so it's just very simple. So what is else if? So else if is just like it sounds. If we have if this, remove the brackets again, try and simplify this so it's not so hard to understand. If this is equal to 3, which it is, it will get in here. But we could also have, let's just take a simple one of these, copy, paste, semicolon, add new line character, and let's add a different print that says something like got into boolean else if, and we'll take boolean and I guess print, no, let's just not print anything. We'll just have the if statement letting us know what happened. So if we run this, you'll see that it just prints that. Now if this wasn't an else if this was just an if, it would go if that else that, boolean's not true. So let's make boolean true as well so I can illustrate this fact better. So we have it printed both because both are true. But if we added the else if, what's going to happen? We're only going to see one. Why is that? So we're really saying if this is true, do this. That's it. If this is not true, else if this is true. So what it's saying is it's executing these in order. So if this one's true, it stops. It just goes on, continues with whatever code you may have here into x equals 0. And so but it'll just keep going from there. But if you have the else if, so it'll if this is false, it'll then check the else if and try and execute that code. So if this is equal to 5 or something, so this, or 6, whatever, it's not equal to 3, so it won't print the stuff in there, and it'll go to the next one, gotten to the boolean else if. So it skips this one, this is not true, and then it goes to the else if and says, hey, is this true? You can also have else statements, which are just default pretty much. So if this is not true, else if this is not true, do this. This is really just like a by default command. So we'll put in some sort of cout here for just letting us know what happened. Got into else. So if boolean was also false, so all statements are false, you'll see that it gets into that else. Got into else. So, you know, it's just a way of kind of more control over what happens. Just letting you know all the tools in your toolbox, because that's what these are. Ifs, else. These are different tools that you have when you're programming for making things do what you want in the way that you want it. Okay, so we also got while. So while is not just like if in the fact that it's a logic statement. It sort of executes some code depending on what happens. The difference between while is a loop. It's not just a conditional statement saying, you know, if this is true, execute this chunk of code and go on. While is a loop, and while says something a bit different. While says, while this is true, keep doing what's ever in my scope. Whatever is in between my two squiggly brackets, just keep repeating that over and over and over and over again. So if we had something like printf hello world, add a new line character to this and semicolon to the end, so that works. Let's put in boolean and boolean equal true. So this will get into the while loop. You'll see it prints hello world over and over and over and over, and this program will never end unless we actually hit the X button and end it. But it won't end naturally, so if we hit F5, it'll just keep running over and over and over again. And so what we can do to sort of show how you can combine these tools together is we can say something like if, and we'll add, let's remove some of these variables and sort of condense this down. So we have count, make a variable called count, make it equal to 0 at the beginning, and we can say when count is greater than or equal to 5, and do this, then we can do something like, say boolean equals false. And we'll change boolean to loop. So we'll just take this variable, copy it here, so it's a little more explanatory of what we're doing. We have count, and we can do count equals count plus 1. So yeah, that's count. Let's actually just sort of remove, well, I might want some of that, so I'm just gonna right click, comment this section out. And so we've got this very simple little bit of code here. We got count 0, loop, true. The only thing is count's going to want to, well, yeah, we've already, yeah. Okay, so then count is greater than or equal to 5. Count is equal to count plus 1. So what is this going to do? Now let's show debugging. So debugging you can do from this little piece up here. There's these different little buttons that allow you to step through things, and we can right click on, shoot, I meant to click on this gray space. So over here we can click here on the side, or we can use the F9 key when we have the cursor on a line, and that'll put the point over here. So there are these giant red balls, which aren't normally that giant. Normally they're like that size, but where we're zoomed in so much, we have these giant red balls. These are breakpoints. So if we use F5, now we've been using Control F5 a lot, because Control F5 will give us that end statement. But if we hit F5, we'll actually hit these breakpoints, because we're now debugging through the code and we'll hit breakpoints. And so you can hit F10 to step over, so it'll go to the next line, or you can hit this little button up here. I like using the F keys, but just to show, here's that button. And then you can sort of see all of this stuff here. And you can kind of get an idea of what's happening as it goes through. So you can see what this is. Can walk in, see it line by line as it does stuff. It's going to see out hello world. Yeah, it did that. It's going to do a check and see if count is greater than or equal to 5. We know count is 0. We can see that right there. We also have this, when you run, you get this watch window that'll come up. Normally that's not there. So if we just shift F5 to stop debugging, you'll see that window's not there. But when we hit F5, and let's walk back down to where we were, we have this thing called the watch. We can drag stuff into the watch. We can also type things into the watch. So loop, help if I spell it right. And you'll see that it, I should mention quickly though that this is all caps sensitive, so if you name a variable, even the caps matter. You see when I put that to little l, it didn't know what it was. So capitals matter, so you want to spell it exactly the same, caps included. You type in loop, you'll see that's true. And so you can watch this watch now and sort of see what happens, or you can hover over a variable and it'll let you know. So you can see it didn't get in here. It didn't, the little yellow line never entered onto this 15th line statement. Instead it went from right down past this if and went to this chunk of code and did count plus 1. You can see down here in the watch the count went to 1. Now we're back into this loop. You see it repeated because while loop is still true, so it just came back up to the while loop, checked if it was true, saw that it still was, so it continues. So it'll print again. See it printed hello world, count greater or equal to 1 or greater or equal to 5. It's not. 1 is not greater than or equal to 5. So then it'll just skip this if statement, go right to count, change count to 2. See it change down here. And then we can keep doing this and it'll just keep printing until it gets to 5. So now it's at 5. It'll print. We've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 prints. And then because we're in the fifth loop here, but we put the count at the bottom, so it'll get in one more count. So that's why there's 5. Actually, in theory, I should have probably put that up above so this would be more clear. But yeah, it went through. This is it got 5th on the last loop, but it'll print this one more time before it reaches this statement. Cout is equal or greater than or equal to 5. That's true. It's going to hit here, set loop to false. Loop is now false, so it'll get up to the top of this while. It's false. It's going to get out, end the program, and oh shoot, I F10 past the last bracket, so it kind of messed up. But well, it didn't mess up. It went into sort of the background code is what you saw there of what's happening in the background. But yeah, so only concerned about what's inside of this from this bracket. So don't F10 past. But yeah, so you've seen it got out of the loop because loop was equal to false. That's a sort of an example of these two working together. I think that's pretty much all there is to do with the while loop. It's pretty simple. If this is true, just keep executing whatever's in my scope over and over again. And so this debugging can come in real handy, though, because you can kind of walk through and sort of see exactly what's happening and sort of get a very clear understanding of how your code's executing itself and sort of check each time and see, did it get in that if statement. You could also hit a breakpoint here and hit F5, and then it'll keep going until eventually count will be equal to 5. It'll have printed it 6 times. So you can do a lot of different things with breakpoints and sort of F10ing through the code. So that's pretty much while loops, print statements, if statements. You could also do something like this. Using that else functionality, we could do something like this if we wanted this to only print 5 times. So this way what will happen is, if count is greater than or equal to 5, it'll exit, set the loop to false, else it'll do this. So if we run this with Control F5, you'll see it only printed 5, because what's happening now, if we close that and get rid of this breakpoint and that breakpoint, and we'll just put one here actually, and then you can see that it's skipping this section because it's false and just by default printing hello. So once it gets to 5 though, so we can see in the watch it's now 4, set to 5, so this will be the final loop. Count is greater than or equal to 5. It'll get in here, and then it won't do this because this was executed. This was true, so it won't do this else, so we'll only have 5 prints.